All right, let's jump right in. We're going to be talking about something called team-based learning. And it's this really powerful idea that's all about moving students from, being in the backseat of their education to actually grabbing the steering wheel. I mean, come on, we've all been there, right? You're sitting in a lecture, trying your best to follow along, but your mind just drifts. You're there, but you're not really there. It's that feeling of being a passenger. And it actually points to a pretty big problem in how we often think about education. And that problem is what you're seeing right here, the classic passive classroom. For a long, long time, the main way of teaching has been this top-down model, where the expert talks, and the students, well, they just listen. And this is the cycle, isn't it? You listen, you cram for the test, you memorize just enough, and then poof, it's gone a week later. It's not efficient, and it for sure doesn't give you the skills you actually need out there in the real world. It's missing that key ingredient, real, active engagement. So what's the fix? Well, this is where a pretty incredible solution comes into play called team-based learning, or TBL for short. And it's designed to completely flip that old model on its head. So let's get on the same page about what this actually is. TBL is not just, get into groups and talk. No, it's a super structured strategy. And the keywords to focus on here are applying knowledge and meaningful problems. This is all about taking ideas off the page and putting them into practice. And it works because it's built on these 4 really solid principles. First, the groups are put together on purpose. They're diverse and they're kept small, around 5 to 7 people. Second, and this one's a game changer, is accountability. You're accountable for doing your own prep work and for how well your team does. Third, the assignments have a dual purpose. They have to help you learn the material and help your team learn to work together. And finally, feedback is happening all the time, so you always know how you're doing and how you can get better. Okay, that's the theory, but what does it actually feel like to be in a TBL classroom? How does this all come together? The whole thing breaks down into 3 really clear phases. It all starts before class, with your own prep work. Then, when you get to class, you hit phase 2, making sure everyone is ready to go. And only after that do you get to the really good stuff in phase 3, which is using that knowledge to tackle tough problems. Now, this right here is the heart of that whole readiness phase. First, you take a little quiz on your own. That's called the IRAT, the Individual Readiness Assurance Test. This is what holds you accountable. But then, right after that, you take the exact same test again, but this time with your team. That's the TRAT. And this is where the magic really happens. You're debating, arguing, teaching each other to figure out the best answer together. And once you've proven you're ready, you move on to the main event, the application exercises. And listen, these aren't easy questions you can just Google. We're talking about messy, complex problems that mimic the real world, the kind of stuff that forces your team to think really, really hard. So, why go through all this trouble? What's the big payoff at the end of the day? Well, it all comes back to a core idea, putting you, the student, right at the center of the whole learning experience. And the results are huge. You're not just learning facts, you're building real skills. You learn how to actually work on a team, how to think critically, and you build better study habits. But the biggest thing, it connects what you're learning to the real world and gets you genuinely, meaningfully engaged. This quote just nails it. TBL is how you do student-centered learning. It's a system that demands that students take ownership of their own education, from the prep work all the way to the final solution. And I love this because it helps bust some major myths. A lot of people worry that student-centered means the teacher becomes useless, but that's just not true. The teacher's role doesn't disappear, it just changes from being the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. They become a facilitator who's there to help you learn on a much deeper level. Now, of course, a big shift like this isn't going to be a walk in the park. Making TBL work, well, it has its challenges for everybody involved. Let's be real for a second. For students, the #1 hurdle is you have to do the prep work. You can't just show up and wing it. And for the faculty, it's a ton of work up front to create those great application problems. And it's a huge mental shift to go from lecturing to facilitating. It takes serious planning. So the key takeaway here is that it's not some magic button you can just press. It's a journey, really, a learning process for the students and the teachers, all focused on getting better at, learning. So if we zoom all the way out, what's the most important thing to remember about all of this? If you boil TBL down to its essence, it's really built on 4 simple, powerful ideas. First, the L is for learner. The whole model is flipped. It stops being about what the teacher is saying and starts being about what the student can actually do. Next, D is for doing. You don't build real knowledge just by listening. You build it by getting your hands dirty, by arguing with your teammates, by actually solving those tough problems together. Third, E is for experience, and specifically, a meaningful one. The reason TBL works so well is because the problems feel real and important. That relevance is what makes the learning stick. And finally, R is for reflection. That deep learning really clicks into place when you have to defend your position, listen to other people's ideas, and reflect on why your team made the choices it did. That's where true understanding comes from. Which brings us right back to the big question, doesn't it? When we think about what education should be, we have to choose. Is it about listening, or is it about doing? And what team-based learning shows us is a pretty compelling path forward.